Welcome to Movie Ideas, and today we are going to talk about movie idea for Nayak 2. For those of you who don't know, Nayak, the real hero, was a Hindi-language film that came out in 2001 that was based on a Tamil-language film named Mudhalvan, meaning Chief Minister, also directed by S. Shankar. In the film, Nayak, the protagonist, is a cameraman for a news channel and is promoted to be a reporter, and his first interview is with the Chief Minister of the state, and as he exposes his corruption and shows evidence to prove it on live television. In an attempt to invalidate his allegations, he throws a Hail Mary and challenges him to be a CM for one day. After having apprehensions, Shivaji Rao eventually accepts the challenge, and he goes on to perform so well that after some months the current government collapses. People demand and support Shivaji Rao to join politics, and he joins the politics. He works tirelessly to develop the nation and fight corruption, while facing many other obstacles. Now, I love this movie and its concept, and the plot of the movie has been left at a place that is perfect to explore an idea that no one is talking about. So let me take you to the idea from where the plot has been left. As the movie is ending, we see that under Shivaji Rao's government, India has changed and developed, and we pick up from there. Shivaji Rao's party has been ruling, and even though the country has been developing, he realizes the innate limitation of democracy as a system. Even though democracy and capitalism is said to be not the best systems but the best of what we have. It's really strange that somehow we have all been convinced that democracy has given us all the power we could have, and there is no way to bring more competence and accountability in this system anymore than there already is. People are researching on literal shit, but no university, economists, thinkers, or anyone is trying to come up with a better system. It's like a perfect crime. It's amazing that so much advancement, and yet we don't have another workable system even on paper. The only other system that is talked about is direct democracy as successor of representative democracy, which will not be any more effective than the current system due to lack of participation and lack of knowledge. The story shows that as he has completed his first term, Shivaji Rao has seen and understood the potential and limitation of the fundamental systems. He thinks that democracy, even at its best, cannot solve the problem of income inequality. He fears that when his third term completes, all his hard work will start to go downhill. Things will go back to how they used to be, corruption will rise again, growth will become stagnant, and if he is unable to find a successor who is as vigilant and honest, he doesn't want his country to go back in wrong hands again and wants to find a solution that will work with or without him. He realizes that democracy is not freedom of choice, but rather illusion of choice. As Willie in tweets said, "I don't care who does the electing, as long as I get to do the nominating." If it wasn't for the bizarre events of the interview and an unprecedented nature of the opportunity he got to showcase his intent, a guy like Shivaji Rao would have never made it to the top in normal circumstances, and even after he reached with support of the people, there had been numerous attempts to kill him, and he also lost his parents in crossfire. And even with all his intent, skill, and knowledge, the country was developing, but he was not able to reduce the wealth gap between the rich and poor effectively. He is convinced that no country can remain a developed country under democracy because of the influence of the private enterprise, and that democracy and capitalism are musical chairs of success. In order to protect his country from corruption, Shivaji Rao is determined to find a system better than democracy. Therefore, in order to find a better system, Shivaji Rao tasks his secretary Mr. Bansal to get hold of the people capable to think this through or to gather the ideas in any form available. After a lot of effort, Mr. Bansal says he has one idea that is strikingly different, but it is very primitive, and it was written by a college student. Shivaji Rao asks Mr. Bansal to call the college student and ask him to present his idea. The student comes and starts explaining. The student says that his only goal was to bring more competence and accountability without taking away people's right to vote. So the first step is no-brainer, says the student. One of the problems in today's world is that to become a politician there is no educational qualification required, and there was a time when having someone as a leader who had best interest of people at heart was enough, but today the world has become too complicated and complex with development in science and technologies for a layman to understand and regulate it, and to double down on this, the successful businessman, on the other hand, are at least skilled and intelligent, if not educated. So the election of politicians should be based on some kind of merit system, which is not the hard part. The second part is the one that's interesting. When people pursue to work at the position where their decisions literally impact the lives of millions, then it shouldn't be without consequence. If they fail to deliver, even if they haven't done anything unlawful, there should be consequence, as they don't have to earn any money as government, rather only spend what they freely collect from citizens. So at the end of the 5-year term, where citizens will vote in similar fashion as they do now, but in the form of yes or no to answer whether they approve the work of current government, and the result should be interpreted as follows. If approval vote is more than 50% in favor of yes, then the government can either accept reappointment or can voluntarily retire. If approval vote is more than 50% in favor of no, then all the ministers will be sentenced to prison. No of years will be decided slab-wise. If the percentage of negative vote is between 50 to 60, then 5 years in prison, 60 to 70, then 10 years in prison, 70 to 80, then 20 years, 80 to 90, then 40 years, 90 to 95, then 80 years end. If approval vote is between 95% to 100% in favor of no, then all the ministers sentenced to death penalty. This should apply on all level from ward to district to state to national, and the possibility of death penalty, even though rare, will put things in perspective for decision makers, and it will be kind of poetic justice to see the fate of the politicians in the hands of the uneducated and intolerant people they have thoroughly enjoyed manipulating until now. The vote of approval is important because we as a species have lost the sense of collective consciousness due to our reduced dependency on one another, and the only thing we respond to is fear. Shivaji Rao hears the idea but doesn't seem too sure about it. He asks, wouldn't all the politicians just hire an educated fool to act as their proxy? Student replies, aren't the current politicians proxies of businessmen anyway? And besides, that's what I'm counting on. You see that once this educated fool is in the right place with right powers and knowledge, he will realize that he is the one who has to face the consequence of the vote of approval, and that businessman and his political lords are actually the avoidable threat, and whereas the public has now become the unavoidable threat. In any current system, the politicians know they can bypass judiciary systems, and therefore they have no motivation to fight the businesses except for their own willingness to do the right thing, which they never have. Shivaji Rao sighs and says to Mr. Bansal, this idea is obviously not foolproof, but the vote of approval and punishment is interesting. I believe this has potential to become something. So please do one thing. Create a confidential committee of 5 people, including IS, IPS, lawyer, economist, and someone who they think will be helpful. The committee is formed as decided, and they are thrilled to see such a brave idea. They start to understand all the purpose and philosophy behind it from the student, and then brainstorm and research over it for a couple of weeks. After a few weeks, Shivaji Rao asks them to give them an update on the idea. The committee says that it's a brave idea with great potential. One more crucial thing we can do with this system is that since the election is not done by public, we can get rid of the political party system and try and eradicate the polarization on the basis of left-wing and right-wing ideology. It will also save billions of rupees that are spent on election campaigns that can be used more productively. Right, says Shivaji Rao. And what about the system for appointment on the basis of merit? Are you guys looking at China? Yes, sir, says the committee. I thought so. But keep in mind that even though China has developed their economy tremendously, the quality of life and freedom of their citizen is not up to the mark. Even though the biggest difference is the vote of approval that should ensure the freedom and quality of life, but I wouldn't recommend that we depend solely on that. Think about more aggressive forms of concurrent audits or other forms of control mechanism. Also, since we are actually planning to implement this, so do think about where, when, and how can we implement this. Committee says, if we really are going to do this realistically, then we should first try in only one state, and preferably the slowest growing state where we are in majority, something like Meghalaya. That makes sense, says Shivaji Rao. Also, I want you all to create a 3-year plan. I want y'all to analyze the geography of the state and reconfirm that it is fit for which business. Is it best for agriculture? Are there any other natural resources, or we should use the land for factories and business hubs? What is the current status of transport, educational, and medical infrastructure? What will be the optimal population considering the business it can generate, and then make targets accordingly? Okay, I think this is going in the right direction, so you guys carry on. I have to get to some meetings, and Shivaji Rao leaves. After a few months, second year of his second term is going to end, and for the remaining 3 years he decides to go through with this idea, as it will be enough time to see its impact, and if it doesn't work, he has his third term to make things right. To implement this, an amendment has to be done in Constitution, and as he is ruling with majority, after some back and forth he is able to do it. Now that the new system is in place, it's been seen how it works. And since it has been established in the middle of the term, the current ministers are given options to either be subject to the vote of approval or give up their positions. Most of the ministers give up their positions and new ministers are appointed who are willing to take the responsibility and face the consequences. Most of these people are from civil services. They have been given 3-year plan to mark their performance and progress. CM, however, had not resigned, and as this new system started, the first thing he did was fund the police department properly before making any moves. Because he knew that this new system is 3D chess, and this move of new system was a check, and this means a war was coming. For a year, he just silently prepared with all the new ministers before making any moves. Until now, the growth was happening, but not of general public, only of the rich businessmen of the states who were supporting him in the elections, and he was supporting them with his powers. Now that public directly had the power to punish him, it was time to fight the businessman to win over the public. He called the least powerful businessman of the lot that he used to serve. He tells him that since we have worked together for years, he is giving the businessman a 24-hour head start out of respect. CM says after the next 24 hours the government is going to raid and close all his illegal activities. CM says you are the weakest of the lot, and I need to set a precedent of how things will be from now on. Businessman doesn't take the CM seriously. As the 24 hours passes, the government takes down all the illegal business activity with next 24 hours. Businessman is furious. He contacts the syndicate of the businessman and the mafia. Businessman dies while trying to retaliate against the authorities. The syndicate and mafia sees what's coming for them, so they try to overthrow the government by starting a civil war all over the state. But the government is ready for it. The police start taking out the main people in the mafia and don't let any incidents trying to ignite the civil war become big. After constant strategic fights against the mafia and syndicate, the businessmen lose their support as the major mafia is dead and the corrupt government ministers have already resigned and are not in power. The workers' unions have become stronger. General public's purchasing power has increased as there is no monopoly by the syndicate without the support of mafia. They haven't reached all the 3-year goals, but they definitely seem reachable now. The growth prediction is almost double than last 5 years. And just before the end of the term, first ever vote of approval takes place and most of ministers get more than 50% approval rating, but few old ministers who didn't resign thinking their religious politics will not be affected and their people will not break the unity no matter what. Surprisingly, they chose economic growth over religious politics. At the PM office, the committee says to the Shivaji Rao that this may seem like a win and success, but it's not. This was a very small state with no major businesses and still it almost went through a civil war. If we do this nationwide, then it will not only be the major Indian businesses and politicians, but also international companies. And all the other major governments will indirectly try to interfere as well. Because if this system becomes successful in India on national level, then it will start a revolution throughout the world in all countries. This will invite all the villains from every multiverse like a Marvel movie. Maybe we should go one by one state-wise. Shivaji Rao says, next term is going to be my last term, and I don't think anybody will let this happen after me. And secondly, if we go one by one state-wise, then they will figure out a way to stop this from enforcing in the first place, since they will get every help they can get. I think we should go all in at once. That way they won't get any time to understand or prepare. The same goes for us too, but we will have to figure it out somehow because this is the only chance we have. Shivaji Rao announces in Parliament that next election will be the last election and that he intends to bring Meghalaya model to all of India. This speech has the effect of sirens of war. After a few days as he is sitting with the committee and the student, Shivaji Rao is served his tea. The student who likes the special tea that is prepared always only for PM takes and drinks it as he frequently does and requests PM to order another for himself. After a few minutes the student collapses. He realizes that the tea was poisoned. As the PM tries to help him, he softly says, "Don't worry, we have created a system that will work with or without us. It will work. Make it work." Jai Hind. As he takes his last breath,